The ISB boardroom is a machine that converts politics into symptoms. What looks like a staff meeting is actually an indoctrination ritual, a live demonstration of how an Imperial intelligence officer must speak in order to be considered sane. The scene's engine is Partagaz's pedagogy. He never questions to learn, he asks to measure worthiness. Where would you target these new resources isn't really about Ryloth at all, it's a test of belonging. Give the wrong kind of answer, one lacking specifics, and you've marked yourself as an outsider. There's a word for this sort of test, a shibboleth, a signal phrase that separates who's inside the group and who isn't. Then he springs the key line, security is an illusion, we are healthcare providers. It's a genius piece of authoritarian reframing because it empties conflict of meaning. Sickness doesn't negotiate, sickness doesn't have grievances, sickness doesn't vote, sickness gets managed. The metaphor strips dissent of its politics and therefore any claim to an argument. Once you accept that frame, every treatment becomes mercy. Cutting is care. The ISB are the Empire's thought police, but not in the Orwellian sense of jackboots and midnight knocks. Their terror is quieter. They don't storm into your home, they storm into your language. They turn imprisonment into detention estimates, exile into storage issues, and riot into an interruption of service. They police interpretation itself, deciding what counts as sickness and what counts as cure. Case, Ryloth. Symptoms, erosion of local authority, rising detentions. Intervention, targeted surveillance with measurable outcomes. Case, Arvala 6. Symptoms, displaced persons, storage issues. Intervention, a memo, lagging. The language is a disinfectant. It removes blood and leaves paperwork. To quote Mosk, once the ISB is done, there's nothing to see here. That's why Partagaz crushes Legret's deflection. In the ISB's worldview, pushing responsibility downward, blaming some local official or waiting on their report is weakness, like letting the infection spread. Pulling responsibility upward, owning the problem, claiming it as yours to solve, is strength. That's the act of cure. Hence the public reassignment. Partagaz undertakes emergency bureaucratic surgery on the spot. He amputates a task to save the body. Dedra's moment is deliberately tricky. She gives the mission statement, collect intelligence, provide analysis, conduct covert action, and Partagaz calls it wrong because it's right. The text is insufficient, only the metaphor aligns you with the faith. The test is not whether you memorized the rulebook, it's whether you've internalized the diagnostic lens. Dedra passes on hunger but fails on tone. Partagaz clocks both. We do too, ambition like a scalpel, currently sheathed. The scene's black joke is that everyone speaks as though they're reducing ambiguity, but the effect is just to inflate denial. Detention estimates, storage issues, added protection requests. These euphemisms are the Empire's control levers. If you can reframe arrests as detention estimates and camps as storage issues, you can move them along a workflow. The Empire doesn't run on fear alone, it runs on interfaces that make fear legible to a dashboard. Ferrix slots in perfectly. Blevin calls a riot trouble, tallies the dead like line items, tags a star path unit as recovered inventory. That's the pathology lens doing its work. No causes, only symptoms. Because you don't argue with a symptom, you suppress it and log the time to resolution. Underneath the doctrine, there's also a game being played, Partagaz's personnel politics. He keeps the table unstable on purpose. Praise is a flicker, punishment is public, ownership is a currency. Reassign a memo here, assign Ferrix there. The effect is engineered rivalry. You want officers looking outward at germs, not inward at solidarity. If they're competing for cases, they won't build coalitions. If they're busy passing purity tests, they won't unite against Partagaz or even ask why the patient is always the populace. If you want the scene's thesis in a sentence, the ISB is not the Empire's fist, it's the Empire's diagnostic software. Fists break, software scales. Fists need an enemy in front of them, software needs categories to sort and file. Fists win battles, software makes battles look like routine maintenance. That's why Partagaz doesn't ask for loyalty, he asks for specifics. Specifics are the unit tests of belief. The ability to provide detailed, actionable answers is how you prove your ideological alignment. The boardroom is an instrument. It cleans language until it can be used. It cleans people until they can be moved. It cleans conscience until it can't feel. The scene ends on a name that should clang like a bell for anyone fluent in Star Wars history: Scarif. A junior officer, young, mentions it with the blandness of a shipping report, because that's all it is. There's an increase in construction shipments going to Scarif, and then hard cut. For most viewers, it passes without friction, just another place name in a galaxy stuffed with them. But for anyone steeped in the lore, it's jarring. Scarif is the site of the Death Star's construction. We saw it in Rogue One, and yet the show cuts away as if it was nothing. That choice is deliberate. Andor refuses to underline its own foreshadowing. It withholds the reaction shot, the music cue, the indulgent pause. The biggest project in the Empire's history is treated like a shipping lane, and we're forced to register the enormity of it without help. Casual watchers absorb it as color. Veterans get the itch of something unfinished. Wait, Scarif? That's Scarif? Go back! And the cut denies you that resolution. You don't get to linger. You carry that unease forward. That's the ISB worldview in action. To them, Scarif isn't a horror. It isn't treated as an achievement. It's a logistics item, a line on a chart. Treating it mundanely is exactly how authoritarian systems hide their worst projects, through banality. If apocalypse can be reframed as admin, then no one operating within the machine has to feel its weight. The edit refuses catharsis. We're moving on. The next case, the next symptom, the next task. It teaches us the rhythm of this institution, endless, bureaucratic, and devoid of moral punctuation. Authoritarian systems don't hide their worst projects. They drown them in normalcy.